Whoa, okay, so you weren't kidding around when you said you found a lot of UAP stuff, huh? This is like congressional hearings, leaked documents, firsthand accounts. I mean, come on. It's like we're supposed to be some kind of like Men in Black or something.
And the timing of it all.
Mm-hmm.
It's just wild. We're seeing this whole thing go from like whispers in the shadows to front page news practically overnight. UAPs are mainstream now, and that's huge.
It's crazy, right? I mean, I remember when like talking about UFOs was practically taboo. Now you've got everyone from like pilots to politicians saying, yeah, we've seen things, and everyone's taking them seriously. It's a whole new world.
It really is. And it brings up these big questions about like government transparency and all that. We're talking classified information, possible disinformation campaigns, the whole 9 yards. I mean, what Elizondo said about the CIA and how they've shaped this whole UAP narrative, it's a lot to unpack.
All right, so where do we even begin with all this? What should we be focusing on as we go through these sources? What's the best way to approach this whole thing?
I think the best way to think about it is like we're doing detective work. We're not just going to like accept or reject anything outright, but we're looking at the evidence, the people involved, their credibility, the motives behind all of it, trying to find the connections, the patterns in all this to make sense of a very, very complex puzzle.
Right, because we've got like decades of government secrecy around UAPs, but at the same time, there's this big push for transparency, especially from Congress now. Why do you think that is? What's changed?
It's a lot of things, really. You've got more and more credible people coming forward, pilots, military personnel, intelligence officials, and their voices carry weight. And then there's the whole national security aspect. If these UAPs really are advanced tech, well, we need to know what we're dealing with, right?
Right. It's like everyone's realizing this isn't some fringe theory anymore. And speaking of Congress, there's that whole thing with the UAP Disclosure Act. Senators Schumer and Rounds are leading the charge on that, and it's bipartisan, which is pretty rare these days.
Definitely. And that shows you how seriously this is being taken.
Mm-hmm.
The UAP Disclosure Act is basically trying to force the government to open up their files on this whole UAP thing. They'd have this review board with the power to declassify government records, bring some of this stuff into the light.
So like a group of UAP hunting librarians with top secret clearance. Okay, I like it. But realistically, is this thing going to pass? I mean, the government's pretty good at keeping secrets.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And there's definitely some pushback, especially in the House. It's gotten pretty political, honestly.
Yeah.
Moskowitz even said that the UAPDA's success is riding on a Republican majority in the House.
So not exactly a done deal then. More like a nail-biter of a game, and we're still in the early innings. And speaking of intense, we can't forget about those congressional hearings that have been all over the news. Those are pretty mind-blowing, even just reading the transcript.
Totally. And Congressman Luna said it himself during that July 26th hearing. This is just the beginning. We're going to be seeing more hearings, more investigations. This is far from over.
Sounds like they opened a can of worms they can't close now. You know what really struck me about those hearings? The eyewitness accounts. We're talking decorated military personnel, trained observers, describing these incredible encounters under oath.
And what's crazy is how consistent their stories are. These are people from different backgrounds, different branches of the military, different time periods even, and yet they're all seeing similar things. It's really hard to dismiss that as just misidentification or hallucinations.
Right, like Commander Fravor and that whole Nimitz Tic Tac encounter back in 2004. That's the one that really gets me. This isn't some random guy seeing lights in his backyard. This is a Navy pilot, a total pro describing this thing that seems to defy the laws of physics.
Totally. Fravor said it looked like a big white Tic Tac, like 40 feet long, just hovering over the water. And it wasn't just hovering. It was moving like crazy at these insane speeds, and it even seemed to mess with their radar. And then poof, gone, vanished into thin air.
Seriously, that sounds like something out of a movie. And it's not just him, right? Other pilots backed up parts of his story.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You've got Alex Diedrich, who was also on that mission.
Yeah.
She saw the object, too, describe the same weird movements, the sudden disappearance. And then there's Chad Underwood, who actually got that famous FLIR-1 footage of the Tic Tac, his infrared camera locked onto it. And you can see this thing moving in ways that our tech just can't do, defying gravity, basically.
So multiple witnesses, trained pilots, they all see this strange object, and we even have it on video.
Okay.
That's officially unsettling. Makes you wonder, what in the world are we actually dealing with here?
The million-dollar question, right? And then you've got people like David Grush, who claim to have the answers, whistleblowers, saying the government knows exactly what these things are, and they have for a long time.
Okay, let's talk about Grush, because this is where things get a little conspiracy theory-ish even for me. He's basically claiming there's this massive government cover-up of UAPs going back decades.
Basically, yeah, Grush used to be an intelligence official himself, and he's saying there are these secret government programs dedicated to collecting and reverse engineering crashed UAPs. He says it's been going on for years, hidden from the public.
He even named names, right? Programs, people, locations. That's pretty bold. If he's making this stuff up, he's in big trouble.
No kidding. Grush is definitely risking a lot by coming forward. And it's important to remember that as of right now, no one's been able to independently verify his claims. But still, when you combine what he's saying with his background in intelligence, it throws a huge wrench into everything.
Right. It's like he just threw a bomb into the room and yelled, "Cover up." Hard to ignore that, even if you're not sure you believe it. And speaking of cover-ups, Elizondo talks about this in his book, how risky it is for whistleblowers to come forward with this kind of information.
It's a pattern we've been seeing for decades. People who say they know things about UAPs, especially those who say there's a government cover-up, they face ridicule, career setbacks, even threats. It makes you wonder how much is being hidden and why.
Like something out of the X-Files, except this is real life. And if Elizondo's right, if there really is a cover-up this big, it changes everything. We might have to rethink our understanding of science technology, our place in the universe even.
And the ethical implications are huge.
Yeah.
If the government has knowledge about UAPs, stuff that could change how we understand everything, don't we deserve to know?
That's a great question. And it leads to something I find completely fascinating, the scientific and technological side of this whole thing. We're talking about objects doing things that seem impossible, having abilities we can barely comprehend. How do we even wrap our heads around that?
That's where Elizondo and those 6 observables of his come in. He uses those to try and explain how UAPs seem to break the laws of physics.
Okay, so like a checklist for spotting impossible tech. What are we talking about here?
Well, first you've got hypersonic velocity without a sonic boom. They can move faster than sound, but there's no shockwave.
Wait, hold on. Are we talking underwater UFOs now? Like, are there alien bases down in the Marianas Trench or something?
We're sticking to the facts here.
Yeah.
And the fact is we have reports of these objects moving between air and water like it's nothing. That's transmedium travel. And it's definitely one of those things that makes you go, huh, how is that even possible?
Okay, so back to this list. What else is there?
Let's see. There's low observability, which some people think means cloaking technology. They can just disappear from radar, even from sight sometimes. And then there's the anti-gravity stuff. Instantaneous acceleration changes in direction that would turn a human pilot into mush.
So like those crazy maneuvers Fravor was talking about, with the tic-tac just zipping around like it was nothing, that kind of thing?
You got it. Then you've got what Elizondo calls field effects, which is kind of a vague one, but it suggests these UAPs can mess with energy fields in ways we don't understand. Imagine controlling gravity or inertia or even time.
Okay, now you're just messing with me. But seriously, even if half of this is true, these aren't just some experimental aircraft. We're talking next level stuff here.
And that's why scientists are starting to pay attention. This isn't just blurry lights anymore. This is well-documented stuff. Intelligently controlled objects doing things that should be impossible.
So how do we explain it then? Alien tech, secret government projects. Or maybe, and just hear me out here, maybe it's just some misidentified weather balloons.
You're never going to let that one go, are you? But you're right, there are a ton of theories out there. Some scientists are looking into things like magnetohydrodynamics. It's complicated, but basically it's about how magnetic fields and fluids interact. And some think it could be used for a new type of engine.
So like magnetic fields pushing against the fabric of space-time or something. Now who's the sci-fi writer?
Oh, yeah, I'm just saying, it's not as crazy as it sounds. And then there's the whole idea of warp drives, which I know sounds completely insane, but it's something physicists are actually researching. The idea is you warp space-time around the ship so it can travel faster than light.
Okay, my brain is officially broken, but that's all theoretical, right? We're nowhere near building anything like that.
True. Those are still a long way off. But the point is, this whole UAP thing is making us consider things we thought were impossible. It's changing how we look at what's possible, not just with tech, but with our understanding of the universe itself.
So you're saying the real discovery here might not be aliens, but a whole new kind of physics. That's pretty mind-blowing when you think about it.
It is. And it leads to an even bigger question. If these UAPs really are so advanced, then who created them? Are we talking extraterrestrial intelligence, some super secret group on Earth, or something else entirely?
Okay, now I'm officially freaked out and fascinated in equal measure. But before we go too far down that road, let's go back to government transparency. Because let's be real, governments aren't exactly known for being open, especially when it comes to national security.
That's for sure. And that's why what groups like Declassify UAP and Liberation Times are doing is so important. They're doing amazing work, pushing for more transparency and accountability from governments all over the world.
They're like the UAP watchdogs, right? Keeping an eye on things, making sure the truth gets out there.
Exactly. They organize protests, file those, Freedom of Information Act requests, put pressure on politicians, and it's working. I mean, the reason we're even talking about this now, the reason it's on the news and being debated in Congress, a lot of that is because of these groups and the people who refuse to let this stuff stay hidden.
Okay, but what can they actually achieve? Can they really force governments to tell us what they know about UAPs?
Well, think about it. This whole UAP thing used to be fringe science, something people laughed at. Now it's being debated in Congress. Senators are demanding answers from the Pentagon. The New York Times is writing front-page stories about it. That change that's happening because of those activists.
That's a good point. It seems like things are changing slowly but surely. Still, the government isn't just going to open up Area 51 and be like, come on in, take a look around.
Probably not. But they might be more willing to talk. And that's what these groups are pushing for. They know this is a big, complicated issue, and they're not expecting simple answers. But they're not going to accept being kept in the dark either. They want a seat at the table, and they're making sure their voices are heard.
I admire their dedication. It's like they're saying, we're not just going to sit here and let you decide what we get to know about our own reality.
Exactly. And that's a powerful message.
Yeah.
Because this whole UAP thing, it's not just about weird lights in the sky or even alien tech. It's about transparency, accountability, the right of every person to know what's going on, especially when it comes to something this big, something that can change everything.
Okay, I'm with them. What kind of information are they trying to get, though? What specific events are they focused on?
One example is that 2004 Nimitz case we talked about.
Oh.
Even though we have multiple witnesses' radar data, the government is still being pretty secretive about it. Groups like Declassify UAP, they're demanding all the data from that day, sensor readings, pilot debriefings, the whole shebang.
Right, like show us the receipts. But that was almost 20 years ago. Are there any recent events that are raising eyebrows?
Oh yeah, definitely. In December of 2023, there were a bunch of strange things going on over Langley Air Force Base. Witnesses said they saw these drones flying in restricted airspace. But get this, the Air Force sent out their drone busters. You know, those teams that specialize in taking down unauthorized drones. They couldn't do anything.
Wait, they couldn't stop a few drones? How is that even possible?
Because whatever they were dealing with, it wasn't your average drone.
Ooh.
These things were moving incredibly fast, changing direction instantly, and nothing they tried could stop them. It's like they were messing with the Air Force, just showing off what they could do, and then they just vanished. The whole thing was never explained, and it made people really nervous about how vulnerable our military bases are to these things.
Okay, that's straight up creepy, like something out of War of the Worlds. But if these things are real and that advanced, wouldn't the government be trying even harder to keep it all secret?
You would think so, right?
Yeah.
And that plays into the whole cover-up theory. But here's where it gets really interesting. In February 2024, a few months after that Langley thing, there were those UAP shoot-downs.
Shoot-downs? Like they actually shot these things down? I don't remember hearing about that.
It was big news at the time, but then it kind of got overshadowed by everything else. Remember that whole Chinese spy balloon thing?
Oh, right. The great balloon saga of 24. Who could forget? Everyone thought it was aliens for a minute, and then it turned out to be a weather balloon, or was it?
It was definitely a Chinese surveillance balloon, that much we know. But the interesting thing is, after that, the U.S. government tweaked their radar, so it was picking up smaller, slower objects. And guess what? They started seeing a whole lot more UAPs.
Wait, so they were there all along, we just weren't looking for them. That's kind of reassuring and terrifying at the same time. What about the shoot-downs, though? What did they actually shoot down?
Nobody seems to know for sure, and that's what's driving everyone crazy. The government wouldn't say what they were, where they came from, nothing. Just that they shot down a bunch of objects over North America.
Super shady. So what do people think? Were they just more spy balloons? Or something else?
It's a total mystery. Some experts think they were probably more balloons or maybe advanced drones sent by China or Russia to test us after the whole spy balloon debacle. But others say the government's being way too quiet about the whole thing, which makes them think it could be something they really can't explain.
So back to square one. More questions than answers.
Pretty much. It's kind of a theme with this whole topic. But here's the thing. Even as those shoot-downs were just drones, it shows how important it is to take this seriously.
Because if it's not drones, it could be something a lot more unsettling.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we need to be ready. We need to understand what we're dealing with, whether it's advanced drones, secret government stuff, or something completely out of this world. Ignoring it won't make it go away.
Okay, that's a sobering thought. So what can we do? We've talked about government secrecy, Citizen activism, national security. It's a lot to take in. What's the next step?
Well, one positive development is that Senators Rounds and Schimmer reintroduced that Unidentified Anomalous Phenomena Disclosure Act, the UAPDA, into the FY25 NDAA back in July. They're really pushing for it, and it could be a huge step towards transparency.
Okay, remind me what that act is supposed to do again. We talked about it earlier, but I need a refresher.
It would basically create a review board that has the power to declassify government records about UAPs. Think of it like a truth commission for UFOs. They could call witnesses, access secret documents, really get to the bottom of what the government knows.
Sounds promising. But we also talked about how some people in the House of Representatives aren't too thrilled about this whole thing. Why not? What's the problem with finding out the truth about UAPs?
It's complicated. Honestly, part of it's just politics. The whole UAP thing has become a political football, with some saying it's a national security threat and others saying it's a chance for scientific progress and global cooperation.
So less about aliens, more about business as usual. That's disappointing, but not surprising in the slightest.
Yeah, unfortunately. But some officials are also genuinely worried that if we learn too much about UAPs, it could put our national security at risk. They're saying it could show our enemies weaknesses in our defenses or give away secrets about how we gather intelligence.
I get that, but it's frustrating that they're hiding behind national security to avoid being transparent. It's like a no-win situation.
It is, and it's a tough balancing act. How do we make things more transparent without putting genuine national security interests at risk? It's something everyone's trying to figure out.
Okay, so where does that leave us? Are we stuck just speculating about what the government might or might not know about UAPs?
Not necessarily. The fact that we're having this conversation that UAPs are being taken seriously by lawmakers, scientists, the media, it's a sign that things are moving in the right direction. We're finally starting to have an open and honest conversation about something that's been kept secret for way too long.
I like your optimism, but let's be real. This isn't just about government transparency or national security. This is about something much bigger, right? Like, are we alone in the universe? What else is out there?
Exactly. And those questions are both exciting and terrifying. They make us question everything we thought we knew about reality, about our place in the cosmos. We have to face the unknown, expand our minds beyond what we think we understand.
It's like staring into the void and the void staring back. Okay, now I'm getting spooked again. Can we lighten the mood a bit? Talk about something a little less existential?
I think you're starting to enjoy all this cosmic dread a bit too much. But you're right. It's good to remember that UAPs aren't just about big philosophical questions and government conspiracies. They're also about scientific curiosity, about exploring the unknown, about pushing the boundaries of what we know.
So like Indiana Jones, but instead of hunting for lost treasures, we're hunting for answers, evidence, that perfect UFO documentary on Netflix.
Maybe all the above. But on a serious note, the UAP phenomenon has the potential to completely revolutionize how we see science and technology. Just imagine if even a small part of what's being reported about UAPs is true. We're talking about tech that could change everything. Energy, transportation, space travel, even.
Okay, now that's the kind of alien tech I can get behind. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Still got a lot to unpack here. What else can you tell me about those 6 observables?
That stuff is mind-blowing, and I feel like we've only scratched the surface. You know, it's weird. We talk about all this crazy tech and the 6 observables and all that, but there's this, like, primal part of my brain that lights up when we talk about UAPs, like when you're out in the woods and you see something move in the darkness. That fear of the unknown, right? It's instinctual.
Yeah.
But it's also got this, like, curiosity tied into it. We're drawn to these mysteries, even though they freak us out a little.
Totally. And it makes you wonder, is that part of why we're so obsessed with space exploration, with finding life out there? Like we're trying to rediscover something we lost here on Earth.
Now, that's an interesting thought. And it actually reminds me of something Elizondo talks about in his book, this idea that UAPs aren't just a scientific mystery, they're a spiritual one, too.
Okay, now we're really going deep. But I see what you mean. It's like this whole thing forces us to ask these huge questions about who we are, why we're here, our place in the grand scheme of things.
Exactly. It's like holding up a mirror to humanity with all our anxieties, hopes, and that sense of wonder you were talking about.
Perfectly said. And it's a humbling in a way. For all our scientific advances, all our tech, we're still just this species trying to wrap our heads around the universe. We're still looking for meaning, connection, something bigger than ourselves.
I love that. And you know what? It's kind of comforting. We're not alone in this. There are other people out there asking these same questions, looking for those same answers. Whether it's scientists studying UAP data, or activists fighting for transparency, or just regular people staring at the stars wondering what's out there.
It's a global conversation, and it's finally happening. After all this time, For too long, the UAP thing has been hidden in the shadows, dismissed as nonsense, even ridiculed. But now things are changing.
They are. And that's huge. It shows the power of curiosity, of critical thinking, of refusing to accept the easy answers. It reminds us that we have a responsibility to face the unknown, ask the tough questions, and demand answers from the people in charge.
So what can our listeners do? They've heard all this. They're probably just as fascinated as I am. What's the next step? How can they be part of this?
That's the spirit. First thing, stay informed. There are tons of great resources out there, websites, podcasts, documentaries that go deep on the UAP issue. Don't just rely on the mainstream news. Do your own research, challenge what you think you know, and be open to different perspectives.
Don't be afraid to go down those rabbit holes, right? Just maybe bring a flashlight and a healthy dose of skepticism. But it's not just about learning, is it? There's got to be more we can do.
Absolutely. Get involved. Support groups like Declassify UAP and Liberation Times. Reach out to your representatives and let them know this matters to you. The more people speak up, the more seriously they'll have to take this.
It's about taking back our right to know right, to have a say in what we're allowed to know, especially when it comes to something as potentially world-changing as UAPs.
Exactly. And never underestimate the power of just talking about it.
Yeah.
Talk to your friends, your family, your coworkers. The more normal these conversations become, the more we can break down the stigma and get to the truth.
It's like we're all part of this huge global investigation, piecing together a puzzle that spans time and space. And maybe if we work together, share what we know, demand transparency, we can finally see the whole picture.
I love that analogy. Because it's not about finding all the answers right this second. It's about being part of the search. It's about embracing the mystery, the wonder, the sheer possibility of it all.
I'm feeling inspired. It's like we're living in a science fiction novel and we get to write the ending.
What a way to put it. Who knows what amazing discoveries are still waiting to be uncovered?
I can't wait to find out. This has been incredible. Eye-opening, mind-boggling, a little bit scary, honestly, the whole package. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive.
It was my pleasure.
Yeah.
And to everyone listening, stay curious, keep asking questions, and keep your eyes on the sky. Because the truth is out there somewhere,